So I want to get into the toileting because a couple of you talked about toileting. And one of the questions was, we're transitioning into school and my child really had accidents. One, I want you to walk the school, see where the bathrooms are, but go with your child to the bathroom. If you're the kind of parent that always is with your child, even at home in the bathroom, or if you go to a restaurant and you're in the stall all the time, start to pull yourself back from that, where your child is more independent using the toilet at home. If your child doesn't ever even go alone at home, start shifting. Maybe it's the other parent that's doing it if there's another parent involved, that it's not always you, but you've got to get your child independent and toileting at home. Assuming that's happening, walk the halls, see where the bathrooms are. Now, if your child isn't comfortable with others, social anxiety, one of the characteristics of an individual's social anxiety is something called paruresis, which is shy bladder syndrome. I'm not comfortable going to the bathroom around others. I don't want anybody to hear me go to the bathroom. They hold it in. Shy bladder syndrome, paruresis. That's common. Even eating around others can be difficult. So if you have a child that's not eating around others, that's also a social anxiety trait. Sensory, the loud toilets at school. The toilets at school are power toilets, usually. And so for our sensory kids, that noise. Okay, so what I would say is, why is your child not going in school? If it's urinating because they're young and they're starting to toilet train, that's a whole separate thing. But if it's really about, I'm afraid to go to the bathroom, maybe there's a separate room they go to. Maybe you do, not to encourage the dependence on you, but maybe you do need as a first step to go into the bathroom during school in the morning so your child goes. And if your child's only there 3 hours, maybe you come in at the end and your child goes as a first step to get your child to at least go to the toilet in the school. And then you start weaning yourself away. And sometimes we do it where the parent is in the stall with the child. If that's how you do it, parents outside the stall, parents 5 feet away, 10 feet away, outside the room. That may be what some of you need to do. And we have charts for that. Or the teacher has to take that child at a separate time. One thing we're not talking a lot about are IEPs in this particular podcast, which Jen Brittingham will talk a lot about school. The last day, the last section, we do that because we want to teach you the concepts. Then we get into school because that's the last thing and often the things you guys really want. So we have that at the end of CommuniCamp. But we talk about it throughout, obviously, and you'll know so much more when you go into the school section from all the things we're teaching you. But some children need IEPs. So if toileting is an issue, eating is an issue, they're not really functioning well in school, they're really not communicating in school, maybe they're wise or sensory, timidity, whatever it might be, they may need an IEP. And if that's the case, then you need to approach the district and request an evaluation for an IEP, because they may need extra supports that typically in a classroom. And when your child is still in preschool, it's called preschool child with a disability. Don't get panicked over that term, but preschool child with a disability is okay to get the accommodations you need in the school and possibly the interventions. Some schools, you need an IEP to get even small group work or to get somebody extra in the class. Sometimes it's just a 504. And depending on how your child is functioning, you may not need that. It might just be a wait and see where we do basic education to the school, see how the child does, and then we may need to dive in. And if your child goes to a private school, you don't get those. You might get services in the public school, but most families don't want to take their child out of school to have services. But in preschool, there's a lot more they can do with preschool child with a disability bringing services in versus once you're in kindergarten.
I just follow up there. My kid does use the toilet independently, and she's at school for 5 hours. Since I work there, I take her in, she uses the bathroom, and the 2 times in the last year where she refused to put on a diaper and wanted to try underwear, I take her to the bathroom like 3 or 4 times a day. She can't let it out. So like the paruresis sounds really appropriate there.
Yeah.
And then she has an accident on the floor in the classroom. So I have her in a diaper and they change her in the middle of the day. And then whoever picks her up takes her to the bathroom and she goes to the bathroom. So she has the ability to do all these things, but she's so anxious, even with the teacher not in the bathroom and no one else in the bathroom, she just can't let it out.
What's been happening at camp?
She was wearing a diaper in the morning. Okay. They brought me in at lunchtime. I changed it, and then she did underwear the rest of the day. So I guess I'm just wondering, does anyone go to kindergarten in a diaper? And what happens?
Well, she still has another year.
She does.
And I want to help you with your own anxiety over this because I get it. We all are. I don't even want to talk about kindergarten. She's just turning 4.
That's true.
And my suggestion is let's take a wait and see and work on things now because children are completely different in 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months. And Misty knows because we've worked together. Your son is a completely different boy than he was when I met him.
Yes. And that was just November.
Right.
But
November.
What he was a year ago, I said in basketball, my husband had to go on the court and practice with him. And he was and he went to an NBA game and played the halftime show in December, whatever. So that's a really big step.
Yeah.
And that's included in all of this.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I want you to not worry so much about kindergarten, but let's see what we can do now because the questions and the concerns you have aren't going to necessarily be there for next year. So I think a big key for her is lowering her anxiety and working on anxiety lowering techniques to help her. But I would say definitely getting her working on that with the toileting within school and even seeing with a timer how long she can go and then coming in and letting her be successful rather than hit or miss. So if over 2 hours, some children, I hear what you're saying. So at home, she doesn't wear a diaper. It's just school.
No, only at school.
Yeah. So I think it's really working on that. And I can hear the anxiety there. And I think it's a work in progress. In other words, we know where her starting point is and we have to work on that and maybe getting her into a pull-up and not a diaper and really helping her because it sounds like it's not even coming out in the bathroom.
It's not coming out of the bathroom.
So you going with her multiple times where she goes, is she going with you?
Yeah, but I don't go to her classroom in the middle of the day.
You may need to go to get her to go with you even in the beginning of the day where she's peeing on the toilet.
I do.
And she goes? Mm-hmm. Okay. So maybe once at least getting her to go. This is like a whole consult in itself. I wish I just so much to it to get the steps going. What I mean is there's so much that we can't like focus all of it on the podcast. But does that give you a perspective a little bit?
The relax and wait and see what happens in the next year is helpful and maybe stop spinning my wheels about should I get her an occupational therapist or should I whatever. Is
it possible? She's going in school, so she's going. It's not like she's not going.
She can go in the space. It's just when her comfortable people are not around. So what I would
say is she goes with you, and maybe one of the charts, because she's almost 4 and she's bright, is showing her a chart where she sees she goes with mommy. Then you take 3 steps away, and she sees herself now. She gets points for going when mommy's 3 steps away. And then she does it, and then she goes and mommy's 10 steps away. So she starts to go when you're not there. Because it might be she's not comfortable with the teacher taking her. So
that's exactly what it is.
So instead of the teacher coming and replacing you, you've got to take that. Remember one of the things like some of the parents were saying, it's steps. Mm-hmm. I always say to go from the first floor to the second floor, you're taking those steps and you're cutting them up. And by the time you get to the 5th step, you're flying. But I keep looking at Misty because I work with her so closely and her son. And I see him here at camp and how amazing he's doing and talking and asking questions and having met him not even a year, last November, he was a totally different kid. In such a short period of time, he's just doing so amazing. So I know these kids can do this. But I think for you, I'm happy to share that chart with you of mommy's here. And it's that visual chart of knowing where she's at, then the next step, then the next step, and then next step. And all of a sudden she's going with you out of the room. And maybe the teacher needs to come in and replace you outside.
Yeah.
And maybe she needs to go when there's no kids around. Maybe she's a sensitive child. I reviewed her paperwork and she's a very sensitive child. So having a lot of people around may not be great for her. And that's part of that social anxiety trait.
Right.